Hi, my name is Matt, and right now you're watching my video on how I made this epoxy river table. Now the original idea was to have this be a bedside tabletop, but it's a little bit too thin for my liking for something like that. I could still use it for that, but I've had a couple of other ideas, from wall art to being a serving tray. I would really like your guys' opinion in the comments on what you think I should do with this, and any crazy suggestion would be much appreciated. Thank you so much, and I hope you guys enjoy. Goodbye. So this is a project that I've actually been looking to do for quite some time. I actually got this wood from a local sawyer when it was still very green, so I've had to wait about a year for everything to dry out. What I'm doing right now is just trying to surface one side so I can get two flat and parallel sides. Now this is my first time using a router surfacing jig. I actually made this jig intending to use it purely for this project, and I really enjoyed using it, but there's a lot of issues that I need to work out. With using this router, and I may end up using a different type of router that has more control over when it will actually stop. Now once I had gotten a flat surface on the majority of the wood, I felt comfortable in just sanding off some of the rougher marks and making sure I had a nice flat surface for the resin pour. Once I surfaced both sides, I started cutting out the sections that I would like to use for my resin pour. I wanted to use the bulk of it for one side and use the leftover pieces to form the other corner. That way I would have a more stable tabletop. However, I quickly realized that this was not going to work out as well as I thought, in part because it's hard to get a good miter joint when you have a limited amount of size, and also because I really messed up making this miter joint. As you see here, I overcut the miter by about an inch, which means that the corner that I was hoping to have wouldn't be anywhere near large enough for what I was hoping to do. When I realized this, I went about trying to figure a good way to fix it, until I just realized that my best choice was to cut this side at a 90-degree angle and try and make the other end look like a faux piece of make the other end into a faux live edge. Once I had the pieces set out, I set about making the area that I was going to pour these in. Now, I don't have any melamine lying around, so I just took some scrap plywood that I had and I covered it in packing tape. And then I went about covering the sides in small pieces of scrap wood I had lying around, also covered in packing tape. Now, the resin pour is always one of my favorite things to do. I started off with mixing black and blue for the base coat to give it a much darker hue, and then I made several pours that are not on camera where I used various other colors, namely blue and white resins for the top layers. One thing that I really enjoyed doing was adding a little bit of isopropyl alcohol and seeing how it impacted making kind of a mushroom cloud sort of effect. I really enjoyed dispersing this all over and also mixing that in to really get a more vibrant hue and more vibrant kind of color shift inside the resins. After the pours were done, I thought that this would be a relatively easy process. So, I finished with the pours. It looks beautiful right now, but I need to plane to get off all the excess resin. So I'm about to show you guys that and finish this up. And that will conclude this video. In the next video, I'll probably make a stand for this to be a side table. Unfortunately, Pastor did not anticipate how weak this resin was going to be. One thing that I really regretted for this project was I used really cheap resin, and then because I was still getting used to using this router jig, I took off significantly more surface than I should have. The end result of that was a very flimsy tabletop after my first couple of passes. So I had to make some modifications to the original plan. Once I realized how weak the resin was, I realized I had to put some banding around the edge to make sure that the resin would stay in place under its weight. And so I decided to do that with some walnut that I had lying around. The first thing that I wanted to do was I wanted to cut down all of the rough sides to my original pour. This way I would have nice good corners. Then I went about the process of making the walnut that I had the right thickness for the tabletop. And after I had two pieces that would satisfy for banding the edge of the table, started mitering the corners and making sure that I got a good and accurate edge banding all around. What I'm doing here is just cutting the miters and making sure that I get no gaps when I put them onto the edges of the tabletop. So I have this all glued up with the sides for support. Now, one thing that I'm having is I have a lip on the top edge. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to cut off these sides and bevel in the top to make it nice and flush for the reveal. So that wasn't very clear about exactly what my plan was. My plan was to remove a little bit of the excess that I had on each of the sides and then to just kind of bevel it in and make sure to sand everything nice and flush. So you're seeing me bevel the top and then turn around and put a little slight back bevel into the sides. And this was my end result after a whole bunch of sanding. I want to thank everyone for watching, and if you could please leave a like and subscribe, that would really mean a lot to me. Thank you. Goodbye.